United States, and I love VIVA. I love what you do, and I support everything that you guys do, and I want to be able to help a little bit. So I've been asked to talk about social problems. I thought, goodness, there are so many social problems. Where would I start? I decided to talk about this thing called social determinants of health. Okay, I don't know how many of you have heard of that before. Social determinants of health are those things in society that impact or determine our physical health. So it's not just what we put in our bodies, it's not just what we eat, although what we eat definitely plays a part, but it's also the fact that there are things in society that can improve our health or not. So I just want to talk about that. Some people are more susceptible to the social determinants of health than other people. So here's an example. Here in the United States right now, there's a higher percentage of Black people who are dealing with COVID-19. Why is that? So people like me that read about these things often, study these things, and talk to other people, understand a little bit more about how society has treated Black people, but also just as time has gone by, how Black people have fared in the United States. And so all of these things play into how our bodies react and interact when something else comes up, like a global virus, okay? So, but that's just an example. There are lots of different marginalized groups. So some places, the marginalized group may have to do with race, it may have to do with a person's religion, their gender, sexual orientation, all kinds of things. But often, very often, it has to do with wealth, income, okay? That puts people in jeopardy in terms of society and the social determinants of health. But that was just an example. What I'd like to do is tell you about some of these social determinants of health. There are several of them, but I want to talk about the main ones. So first of all, I want to talk about education. So people with higher education have some advantages. If you have higher education, you have a job that allows you to stay home in times like this when you need to be able to stay home and work, because they are jobs that use your particularly your expertise. They can be computer based. So the higher your education, the more likely you have that kind of job that allow you some possibilities and to be able to make choices. Higher education also puts you in contact with more information when you need it. That also affects your health. I think that higher education helps, and I'm not talking about just formal education, but just more education helps you to even know what things are okay and not okay. So education is one of the things. Another one is probably a no-brainer, but is wealth. How much money you have actually determines how healthy you can be. Why? Well, one reason is because if you have more money, you have more and better access to healthcare. You're able to live in a neighborhood that is safer and healthier. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, what that means. If you have more wealth, then you can pay for different remedies. Some medications are very, very expensive, and if you have a chronic disorder and you can't pay for your medication, then it's only going to be worse, right? So wealth and education, having access to fresh food. So that's the next thing I want to talk about is access to healthcare and fresh foods and those kind of things. Access. So some of us are able to get to a doctor quickly because we have private insurance, or because we live near a place that has lots of different medical places around, whatever it is. And some people don't. So that determines how close are you? How easy is it for you to get to healthcare? When I talk about access to fresh foods, there's this thing called a food desert. Some people live in food deserts. Now, that's not just places that have sand everywhere, not like a desert, but places where fresh food and good, healthy food is far away from where they live. Too far to walk, right? Or if you have to take a bus, it takes 2 buses to get there, and it takes all day, But if you live in a place, in a society, in a neighborhood where there are no markets, no fresh food, no grocery stores nearby, only convenience stores, you're likely to have less better health. Okay, so access to healthcare, access to food, fresh foods, neighborhoods. Let me talk about neighborhoods for a minute, because there are two very different kinds of neighborhoods. In this town, actually, you can live in a neighborhood that has nice wide streets. They have lots of trees and grass and flowers, so that green stuff is really good for our health. They have regular trash pickup. People come and pick up the trash and take it away. They have access to good water systems and good water filtration systems. They're safer because maybe law enforcement comes around more often to check and make sure everyone's okay. They do not live near an industrial park, right, where there's chemicals in the air or in the ground. They have no electrical parks, because we have found that they emit something in the air. So places that do not have animals, like wild animals or kept animals nearby for some reason. But these kind of neighborhoods where the air is clean and it's safe, that's a different thing than if you live in a different kind of neighborhood. That is not a safe neighborhood to live in. But if you live in a neighborhood like that, you can't just afford to pack up and move to a better neighborhood, right? So that has a difference. That plays a part in your health. The other thing is, the next two things I want to talk about are interesting because they have to do with our emotions. And our emotions and things that happen in our heads and our hearts are chemically processed through our bodies. When we have loneliness, when we feel isolated, again, these emotions are chemically processed. So here's the other thing about it, where this comes into play, our emotions being chemically processed, is negative bias, prejudice, discrimination. So people who are on the margins of society, who are marginalized for some reason or another, and again, it could be because of race, it could be because of being poor, it could be because of our religion, our gender, sexual orientation, whatever it is. People in those groups live with societal discrimination. And when we live that way, we have an elevated level of this thing called cortisol. Some people call it the stress hormone. So why do we have this in our system? We have it in our system for a really good reason. When we are faced with a scary challenge, so you think about this thing called fight or flight that we have. Something scary is going on, we're terrified, we've got to think quickly, we've got to be stronger, we've got to be faster. That's cortisol levels that rise up to the occasion, that help us to be able to do these things. But when our cortisol levels are up high, that means there are other systems in our body that are lower. They get out of the way, so to speak. Okay, so these other systems that kind of get out of the way so that we can fight or flight, they are stuff like how we breathe, how our heart beats, and how our blood flows. Sometimes our digestive systems are suppressed. Some of these other systems in our bodies are suppressed in order to make room for the need to act quickly to save our lives, right? So people that experience prejudice on a regular basis have this heightened level, slightly heightened level of cortisol all the time. They've done all these studies on that. And when these cortisol levels are always kind of slightly high, these groups of people are more likely to have heart problems, asthma, diabetes, some other kind of chronic disorders. And when we have those chronic disorders like these that I'm talking about, that leaves us more susceptible to like bacterial infections and viruses. So actually, prejudice is a social determinant of our health. It can actually affect our health. All kinds of interesting studies being done on that. So I've named some things, and I encourage you to keep looking at them and maybe read some other things. If any of this has sparked your interest, go and read more about it. But education, wealth, neighborhood, access to fresh foods, access to health care, loneliness or depression of any kind, and then having to be in a group that experiences negative bias and prejudice. All of those things are social determinants of health. So all that's bad news. So what can you do? There's some things that we can do about these things. Now, we can't control all of society. We can't control how we're treated often. We can't control where we live. But we can control some things. So here's what I think we should do. We should seek out any kind of preventative medical knowledge that we can and access. So if there's an opportunity where you can go and have somebody look at you and say you're healthy or you're not healthy, you need to do this or that or whatever, then take advantage of those times. And the other thing that we can do is educate ourselves. So if you know what kind of body you have, you go educate yourself on best ways to take care of that body. And it could have to do with your genes. Also, it's stuff like the stage of development that we're in. There's some things about my particular system that I need to understand so that I can live my healthiest self. So knowing about your own body and then educating yourself on how you can keep your body safe and healthy and strong is a very good idea. Also, these are the normal things: exercise, eat well, and then the third thing is sleep. Sleep. So there's a new book, it's a new-ish book about all this research study about how important sleep is. Sleep is amazing. When we go to sleep at night, our body heals of some things, or also it regenerates in some ways. Sleep is really important, so we need to sleep. Okay, so take care of your body in those ways. Also, stay in relationship with people that are strong and healthy and encourage you and help you to be strong and healthy as well. Stay in relationship with people. Talk about how you're feeling. Talk about what's going on in your life. Find out from other people what's going on. Talk about the stuff that's happening in the world. Generate new ideas about things. Have good conversations. Read books. Okay, so that brings me to the next one. Reading books. I love to read fiction. I like to read things that are just fun to read. But having hobbies and things in your life that are life-giving and that balance the negativity is extremely important. So art, dance, any new hobbies, all those things are very good if they're life-giving and can balance. And it's really cool if you can do that with other people too, because then you have the relationship thing. So anyway, I'm hoping that this has been helpful. Just to think about the fact that we have these physical bodies that we need to keep healthy, but understanding that some of the reason why we might be less healthy has to do with our environment and where we live, and to be compassionate about that when it comes to other people and understanding. So, and also just remembering that we can do some things that can prevent bad things from happening to our bodies. We can do some things that help keep ourselves well. So I encourage you to do those things. Remember that there are lots of people that love you and care about you. And again, I just hope this was helpful. Thank you.